65 years separated the arrivals of the two brothers to the panhandle of Idaho. The older one arrived first, in 1943, brought here by the United States Navy. The younger arrived in 2008, brought here by a quest to see where his older brother had trained for service in World War II. Today there is little evidence of what once stood here: a water tower, crumbling spreads of concrete, a ghostly guardhouse. "65 years ago, the field spread before me was the site of a huge complex of buildings known as Camp Benyon. Once hundreds of men called this home. It was part of the Farragut Naval Training Station, named after the first admiral of the United States Navy, who is famous for saying, 'Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.' The training center was built in northern Idaho on the shores of Lake Pendoray in 1942. One of the men who came to Camp Benyon in September of 1943 was my brother, Ronald Albert Parsons. Where he entered Farragut as a recruit not quite 18 years of age, my wife and I entered the park and its visitor center. Here I found a book which listed all the men who trained here. My brother's name was among them. The Navy built the 700 or so buildings that once stood here out of wood, and when the Navy abandoned the site after World War II, and the land sat idle for nearly 3 decades, the buildings rotted and fell back into the soil from which the trees that had been cut to provide building materials once grew. Trees are growing here again. The only building to survive was the brig. It was not built of wood, but of concrete blocks. Today, the brig serves as a museum for the center that existed here for only 4 years, from 1942 to 1946. Ron used to write about the grinder, which was a large concrete oval in the center of the ring of buildings on the outer oval of the camp. Trees, grasses, and possibly a rattlesnake or two now occupy the spot where the recruits march nearly every day. They called it the grinder because marching on the concrete would erode the heels of a new pair of boots in a matter of days. Now the same concrete has been conquered by seeds of grass and trees and weeds. I walked on the crumbling concrete that was new when my brother walked it 6.5 decades earlier. The largest building in each camp was the drill hall. The hall could hold 6 side-by-side basketball courts, a boxing ring, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, an area with a portable altar used for religious services, and an area where 2,000 men could watch a movie at the same time. Since each camp had a drill hall, there were 6 of these huge buildings at Farragut. Occasionally, Ron was called on to help put out a fire in the camp. In the center of the square building that is the brig and museum stands a bright red fire engine marked with the initials USN. There's also a green truck from the 40s parked there. Trucks were used to carry the new recruits from the train station to the camp, as well as to carry supplies. In a room in the former brig, a wall shows a map of the station as it appeared in the 40s when my brother was there. On a bench in front of the map are clipboards from the various camps that were there. The clipboard was for veterans returning to visit the site to sign in. I signed for my brother, writing the word "deceased" next to his name. To the north lies the small town of Bayview, situated on an inlet of Lake Pendoray. During the 4 years the training station stood just south of the town, the streets were often filled with officers and sailors enjoying a break from their duties. In 2006, men who trained at Farragut returned to dedicate a monument to the nearly 300,000 men who trained here from 1942 to 1946. Facing the museum, a representation of the men who served bears the images of the variety of races and creeds who fought for America's freedom during the war. I arrived about a month after my 67th birthday at Farragut State Park to trace my brother's route from boyhood to manhood. Much has changed in the 65 years that separate our two arrivals, but one thing remains the same. Men still need to train in the ongoing defense of freedom. War is still very much an inevitable part of life on this sin-cursed earth. Thank you, Ron, and others like you, who face danger and death to keep us free from tyrants and foes. Though you and the station where you trained are gone, neither of you is forgotten.